Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Season 3 of Heels. We have Phil Brooks coming in as Ricky Rabies, and, it's a really fun character. Man, we have this guy just covered with all this, with all this dead animal upon him, and he just comes in and frickin' has this bizarrish drone that is to be also covered in an animal skin, and it just looks so cool. It's fun and cool and goofy, and it's a lot of stuff all smashed into one in this episode. But there's also some backstory on Tom Spade, which we're like, whoa, what a way to open an episode, to just kind of showcase this character, and all of a sudden he just I'm like, wow, okay, a little bit of little shock in this episode. We're also getting to see a lot of topless women, evidently, in this episode. I was like, holy cow, we get a strip club in this episode. We get to see some glorious women in all their glory, freaking showing it out. If really, if I was to just complain about women wrestlers and whatever, hey, we get to see plenty of women in this episode, that's for sure. Great. That's really awesome that they are kind of doing some different, they're really splitting up the stories too, where it's not just seemingly about just Jack and Ace. There to cover other people also. They're really having these little snippets of Bobby Pin, which there wasn't an actual photo of the character in IMDb. So I was just like, okay, who is the guy that I kept calling Turquoise in the last episode, the rookie wrestler? And then I was like, oh, his name is Bobby Pin, because they said that quite frequently in this episode. Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so Bobby Pin is the new guy. And I'm like, good. So they spent some time to just kind of marinate on this guy, to have him getting some side story here, which I really enjoyed. So we get, of course, a match where Rick Spade is to get hit with blood right in the beginning and just caught off guard, and really fun match in this one. It seems like they're also having to figure out what to do with Stacy to keep her in the story, I guess, which is great. How we technically have Stacy, who is to go out with the gals, and eventually that brings the gals into the wrestling match, because they're to kind of see what Jack Spade is to be doing with this whole dome thing situation and wrestling and whichever, because there is to be a waiter who is to be interested about what's going on. But yeah, so overall, I still had fun with this episode. There was no there isn't one complaint that I could have about anything. I'm really liking where it seems that there is this kind of mystery about Ace, where we are almost to be scared that he does certain things or he goes certain ways. Then all of a sudden we find out that there is just, but there's always just this whole problem with Ace, where it really gives us an edge of our seat almost kind of thing of okay, what's going to happen next kind of thing. Much more what's going to happen next, much more so than edge of your seat, because the edge of your seat would be that you were scared, where you're just kind of hey, what's going to happen? What's going to go into this story, because you're just kind of you're just invested. You're just wanting to see where these characters are going to eventually just explode probably at some point. But there was a lot of feel-good dialogue. We have that one moment where really just Ricky is to just turn to Jack Spade's character and just kind of mention how how this really means for him to get booked in this situation. And like, I thought that that was so nice, like that little bit of dialogue. But yeah, so we get Phil Brooks' character, who is Ricky Rabies, with a son called Wolfgang and a valet named Vicky. And like basically their whole, not their whole, but like their thing is that they traditionally are to be people that douse a wrestler in blood one way or the other. But there's a whole like way of which that they go about it in this episode. So I'll trickle that down into spoiler territory once we get through parts of this episode, because I think I'm going to save a lot of this up to eventually be like the other parts that I probably didn't heavily mention here. So with that said, it's still a great show. Doesn't matter how anybody is to like, I don't like this show, or I'm just like, about the, like, I like the show. Some people may not feel that way. That's okay. Some people may just be like, man, the story is blah, blah. Like to me, I could see where like there's a lot going on, where they're trying to do every single like person and whatever, and some people might like certain stories or like certain things. But like I'm really liking how we're starting to branch this out and have it be more about the overall Duffy Wrestling League, rather than just like focusing on both Ace and Jack. And like it's kind of cool. I enjoy it. So let's go into that double five time territory, because it's about that coveted time to go into spoilers and just really just talk about what I probably didn't talk about in cryptic, almost, well, barely cryptic like sense, because I almost kind of like gave away a little bit kind of in barely vague ways about this episode. So let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we do spoil this episode. So the opening of this episode was a little bit like, what? Like, okay, all right. Because the very beginning of this episode is Tom Spade just kind of jogging around his town. All of a sudden, he's just like consistently jogging around. All of a sudden, Tom is to go and once he is to finally get home, he has to grab a drink from his hose, go and start putting some stuff together, and then all of a sudden Tom Spade is to see a like deer in his lawn, and so Tom Spade is to grab a gun, and you're to think that like, okay, maybe he's to shoot this deer that's in his lawn or something like that. But then all of a sudden Tom Spade goes and takes the gun and points it to himself and shoots himself, and then he flops over the railing of this stairs, and all of a sudden we see Ace, who is to come out and see his father laying sadly dead. And like that's how we open the show. I'm like, whoa, this is interesting. This is gonna get interesting. Like family friendly is not this show, because we've had plenty of episodes of it being the last episode where we start to see a lot more topless women, a lot more sex moments, and whichever. And I'm going to start bouncing around here, so if it's not perfectly in line with the episode, because there's a lot of side story going on here, so if I'm not in perfect order of the way in which this episode is to break down, I apologize, but I otherwise would just say, hey, I'm trying to get out every bit of piece of chunk of whichever of this. So, let's get into it. So, Bobby Pin is to, I guess, be a bouncer at this strip club, and all of a sudden Bobby Pin is trying to call his parents to let them know that he's going to be in the main event of this episode of DWL. So he's like, yeah, like he's calling his parents, he's all jazzed about it, that he's in the main event. And so all of a sudden there's to be one lady who is dancing. All of a sudden having a person that is to get a little too grabby, and so we have the woman who is like saying, Bobby, hey. So Bobby ends up taking her out, not like clothesline, freaking just, he takes her out, he like grabs her and just like, okay, time for you to go. So uh so this is kind of like, most of this episode is to be like a lead up for this night. So uh, Robbie Rabies is to call up Jack Spade and mention that he's 45 minutes out, but like he's never no show, so he'll be there, he'll get there. So we see, hey, like people in life, like people like on the road trips and whatever, like we see Robbie who's taking a dump while he's making a call, and like stuff happens. So like, hey man, freaking like all of a sudden Robbie is to have like made a sound like a flush or whatever, uh and Robbie was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. I thought I was muted." And it's like, "Hey, like part of life, freaking everyone does it. Like, hey, man, freaking like whatever. Like if you're on the pot and you have to make a call, you got to make a call, if you know what I mean." So, uh so eventually they're lining up this big event because supposedly Robbie is a big draw, and supposedly he's a really expensive wrestler to get, and I guess they are to have had a sponsorship deal done with a, I guess, local church, which is to be coincidentally tied to a preacher that I'm trying to think of the name of. I know it's the last name of the guy is to be Murray because I've seen him in a couple shows somewhere. But for the life of me, I'm trying to think of what his actual name is. Because I'm sure I'm just going, God. Anyways, so we're gonna have to do this. So they bring in this sponsorship, and so supposedly they had this preacher uh, go and want to bring in some scripture from the Bible, of course, to kind of like poster onto this ad that they had, and so because really just Jack is looking to try and make some kind of sponsorship or try to make some deal so they can kind of cut cost on things. And hey man, if that means that they gotta like slap a logo like on every single inch of this place to just keep the lights on, and that's what they gotta do to afford certain things. So you used to have like UFC fighters that had like sponsorship on their backs and like and all kinds of things, so that way they could be able to like afford to be able to risk to do this amateur fight because they had a logo slapped onto their back. So like I can understand that like completely. So Jack is to go to the sponsor, and he's to force him to sing that jingle song, which of course he does technically know some of the words of, and so. But Jack is just to ask the guy, hey, like, how about you can do any logos that you want? You can like, if it's on the ring apron, if it's anywhere, like heck, freaking like. Put it on the mats, put it everywhere, like if that means forking over some more dough. Uh, so, uh, so there's that where like Jack is just like, hey man, I just like wherever we can just get money from to just like keep things alive. Because there's a part where Ace is to go out, and give them this speech which he practiced on. And Ace is kind of asking Crystal about this like speech, and she's like, yeah, like maybe deliver it differently. And but like Jax is say, you know what, it's great. And so Jack is almost to be like thinking about making Ace heal. So, because it seems like people are wanting to go to that direction anyways, and so it just, in like, Ace is just kind of upset because in the last episode, Ace said that he never wanted to be booed again, and here he is getting booed, getting freaking tissue paper chucked at him, and I think eventually we find out towards the very tail end of this episode that Jack may have planned the whole tissue paper thing being chucked at Ace. And I'm just like, okay, wow, that's kind of interesting to see that. Like, I wonder if that's ever going to happen where all of a sudden, like, eventually some of the guys are going to start to see how much, like, work that Jack is trying to do to eventually force them to do what he technically wants. And I'm waiting for that episode to happen where eventually things are going to completely fall apart just because, like, people are going to realize, well, it's Jack's way or no way, so maybe it's time to go. Maybe it's time to go somewhere else. Like, we almost have Rooster Robbins, who is to be in this episode, and he is to kind of throw some shade at some of the characters, even Ace or even Bobby Pin, where Rooster is just like, why is it that this guy like has only been here for a very brief time, and all of a sudden he is getting this push? Like, I don't get that at all. Like, because eventually Rooster is to just be like, man, hey, like, I was this. Like, eventually he has a speech towards the end of the episode, but I'll talk about it now. Rooster was to say that he was the, like he was a big thing, that he was this, like prodigy, or he was this, like, big, like, thing to come out, but like all of a sudden he just turned from prodigy to veteran, and like basically he's been a person that's just been forgotten about, because supposedly this guy has said that there's certain times where certain belts have to have a white backdrop to it, and Rooster is to just say like that that he is just like, he needs his time. Where eventually, once Rooster is to go to Jack and tell him, hey man, like, when am I gonna get the title? When am I gonna get a shot? And Jack is just like, well, when it works perfectly for the storyline. It's like, well, when is, like, I'd be like, when is that ever gonna happen? Like, you're almost gonna, like, I almost kind of was like, wait a minute, so is this Rooster just finally saying like, dude, if I'm not going to hear by the next time here, or if I'm not going to hear the magical words title shot in my future, I am out. Like, he's going to go somewhere else. And that's where I feel Rooster is right now, where it's just like, where is he going? Like, where is his career going? So, cue up that. But then also uh, we have Robbie Rabies that has arrived, and basically Robbie Rabies, Wolfgang, and I think Vicky is his valet's name. Uh, Robbie is to mention that they're like, hey man, like, we're gonna do blood, and like, wouldn't it be normally called, I think, I don't know, like, I think eventually wrestlers would usually call blood like getting color. So like, did they just want to just say blood here because basically that's just the, like, like blood would be the easy thing to have, like, people who aren't maybe familiar with wrestling understand that, like, there's going to be blood involved. But so really there is kind of like a whoa 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 about this event, this match, because they're just like, well, hey, like, you do realize that, like, we're kind of appealing to all audiences here. And Robbie's just like, well, hey, like, the whole blood thing is basically like about family. It's about like it's not like it's not about that we're just gonna like cut somebody or which, like, none of that. It's all about like blood meaning family. So it's like that, like, it's a connection. And like, I'm like, okay, that seems okay. Like, hey, they have to rationalize it or whatever. So like, freaking, like, it's interesting. So so then we push on. So let's talk a little bit more about Stacy. So Stacy is to eventually go and have some time with her friends. And so, like, some of the friends are kind of talking about how they don't have a man or something, like, which is kind of sad. But like, hey, you'll probably get that for every like kind of girl group outing, as if I've ever had one in my life, because I'm not a girl, so how would I know? So but these girls are kind of chatting it up. I'm just kind of like, okay, is this gonna go somewhere eventually? Like, is this gonna come back around somehow, or is this just gonna be a one-off thing that it's gonna be? Because I didn't even quite understand like the very tail end of what all this meant for like Stacy and whatever. Um, but really, all of it just meant is that Stacy desperately wants Jack to take some time off, to finally take off and take and do some vacation time. And Jack is just be like, well, like, yeah, but what about DWL? What about like all the stuff that I have to do? And like, Jack is to finally admit that he's exhausted, and it's like, okay, like, we're getting there. Great. Like, great that they're doing this. To really have this come to a head where Jack needs to take this break and he can't. Like, he just can't. Like, you would think that maybe he would be able to, like, write the story to somebody for that week, but, like, he can't give the reins to anybody. Like, he can't trust anybody enough to give the reins to anyone and leave for X amount of days, for especially DWL, where it's just like, if he's gone for a week, is all of a sudden the, like, is everybody just going to go into like the stupid word of going to business for themselves, and all of a sudden people are going to get titles that they shouldn't have, and are people going to get like things that they should not have, or title shots that they should not have, because somebody else was in the business of going like, well, hey, I want this, so like, we're going to change this considering Jack is not here. Anyways, there is also this spot that, or no, wait, let's finish up. So Stacy is to talk to Jack about, like, you need to take a vacation, you need to take time, because like, this is a recurring theme. Like, Stacy is to say like, hey, like, when are we gonna go to Niagara Falls, or where are we gonna go to some vacation? Like, Stacy is just to like look at her husband and just to see that he's just like, God, I just I just need to just like, bah, like, because I'm wondering if Stacy is to think that eventually Jack is going to end up like his father. So it's like, pump the brakes, or like, because we just see this spot where at the very end of this episode, Jack is just start to tear up. And I'm like, good God. I'm like, come on, Stephen Amell. Come on, man. Come on, Jack. Come on, man. Like, I think Jack is just pulled in so many directions, and he's just like, he's just been like pulled for far too long. Everybody wants a piece of something, and like that's where the exhaustion comes from. Is he just getting like Stacy wants them to go on vacation, Ace wants to like be a face, Rooster wants a title shot. Everybody's just like blah, blah. Jack goes on to do his tractor selling job, and his boss hates him. He's getting pulled every single direction, and now he's just to like. I'm wondering if really all of this is just like a moment where he's probably thinking in his head, God, I wish my father were here, so that way like he could tell me what to do. Like, I wonder if really that's the moment that really is to give just Jack these tears in his eyes, because he wants his father to be there to tell him what to do. Maybe. That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, we also have this moment where when Jack is to have Ace go out there and to do his promo for this night, Jack is to mention to Ace that Tom, Ace's dad, knew Ace was home when he went and Tom took his own life. So, like, was it the thing of like Tom was preparing all? It wasn't like it wasn't really a like it wasn't like a spur of the moment thing. Everything was calculated and planned and whatever, and that just seems like an awful thing where every little bit of that might have been calculated, and I was like, wow, like that seems like so awful. But anyways, so we have this camaraderie moment between everybody where we consistently have these ice things that are to be tossed around. I think it's Smirnoff Ice that they're getting tossed around here, where evidently the main eventers get this Smirnoff Ice that they have to chug down. We also have Wild Bill, who is to bizarrely have a video go viral somewhere of Wild Bill, like I think with his wrestling belt, and he is to be in the buff. And so all of a sudden everybody is like talking crazily about that, even while there's to be a main event to get booked. And then eventually towards the very tail end of this episode, Wild Bill is to come to Willie, and just kind of mention that he had messed up, that he had made a mistake. And I'm trying to keep everything like kind of like trying to get into. So let's get into the events. Let's get into the wrestling stuff. Like, I don't think there is many moves that I have to go into heavily detail about. Like, it's kind of interesting how, like, Ricky Rabies goes and 10 punches Rick Spade's character. Like, it just kind of like it's kind of really interesting to see Ricky Rabies and also Jack Spade's match, where it just seems like these are some, like, you can really tell that like Jack Spade or Stephen Amell is just like selling all of this really well, and you can just tell that this is a really good match. And plus also like it's really interesting to see just both of these guys like in the ring and just wrestling, because I know technically you've already seen like Steven's character do some things, but it's also just nice to see them kind of in here. and doing just wrestling. Either one of these characters, either Ricky Rabies, who is Phil Brooks, or either Stephen Amell. It's really cool. So, and it's also cool that they incorporated the audience in the match. I really liked that, where you just see spots where like Ricky Rabies is be tossed in the crowd, like whoa, and then like there's this back and forth where they're kind of using the crowd, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Um, but yeah, evidently the finisher is to be a reverse DDT, which Ricky Rabies was to eventually like blow out his knee, so they had to come up with a way of using the ropes to try and still do this reverse DDT, so that way they can nail it, and so that way they can get the win. And like interestingly enough, we had Jack Spade who ends up doing the dirty pin where he goes onto the ropes, and like that I think was kind of interesting. So because still heel move. So but yeah, so let's go into the Ace promo and like let's kind of like start the whole event and then like get to the opening of the Jack Spade Ricky Rabies thing, and we already know the finish. So so we have Ace Spade go out there and go and do his promo. We have spots where Crystal is to put baby oil on Ace, and supposedly Crystal had a moment with Vicky where Vicky is to tell Crystal that there has to probably be some times where like maybe it's just a touch or maybe it's just like a thing to just comfort this comfort the guy that you're with, and maybe that'll go a long way. So Crystal is to put baby oil on Ace, and all of a sudden Ace is to go and like adjust Crystal's outfit. And so they go out there and they do that promo. All of a sudden people are chucking tissue papers at Ace while he's doing his promo that he's already technically prepared, mentioning that good will always triumph over evil in the end, and like mentioning how like he's trying to get people to maybe like relate to him about that his brother had betrayed him. And so everybody's tossing tissues. They're all like, boo. There's this giant face of a thing of course, Ace just bawling his eyes out. And so eventually there is to be one woman who is like, ah, yeah, cry baby. And then all of a sudden Ace is like, see what? Like, where is that? So, like, this woman is to already, like, get into Ace's face. So eventually Ace just runs out, and all of a sudden Bobby Pin is to try to prevent him because Jack calls Bobby Pin to stop Ace. And so, but Ace just goes on out in the back anyways and is to yell at Jack because like, what the fuck? Like, they're booing me. I didn't want to be booed. And so that's eventually when they go back out there, and both Ace and Bobby Pin are to have their match. And of course, that's when Ace to just turn heel and to do this like donkey kick to the nuts for Bobby. And like Bobby's doing really well, like selling all this stuff, and like Ace is doing a really good job, like doing a bunch of heel tactics, which I really enjoyed. And so eventually at the end of all this, Ace is still to win, but like both of these guys were really good at doing this match, putting it together. And like Ace is to basically call everything, because there was almost a moment where Ace seemed to have gone or vanished or whatever. Jack was to think that, oh my god, like I am going to have to do another match. Like I am going to have to do the uh, this match. And so Jack is just to tell like Bobby, like, hey man, I'll call everything and it'll be real easy. And so all of a sudden, like after Bobby's music hits, Ace is to just appear magically. And then Jack is like, hey, where the heck are you? And so Ace is just like, hey, well, like, you got what you want. Like, I'll just go out there and do the match and, like, everything will work out. Because Ace is to go and eventually talk to Rooster. And that's where we get the dialogue where Rooster is to mention about he is now just a veteran and, like, where is his career really going. And so eventually Rooster is to tell, like Bobby or Rooster is to tell Ace to re-say to him, it's like, man, you cried out there. You cried out there. Like, just to, like, really give him that momentum to, like, yeah, I am going to be a heel. And I am going to, like, boo-hoo cry at everybody. Because boo-hoo. Frickin' boo-hoo, all of you people. So Ace goes out there. Ace does a great match. And then he leaves. Before that, he ends up giving crap to Crystal and crap to Willie and just drudges off. Jack goes and is like, hey, like those women didn't deserve that. And Ace is like, well, you got what you wanted. Like, I'm a heel now. I'm a bad guy now. Like, I'm gonna just, like, live that persona to a T. I'm just gonna be a dick to everybody. That's what I'm gonna be. So, yeah, so we're going to see where all this develops. All this stuff goes on. Did I cover everything? Probably not. Stacy goes and arrives at this wrestling match, and a lot of girls have their all different opinions about everyone, and like a lot of the girls are loving it, and it's like, that's interesting. So is this gonna just be a thing now, or is it just gonna be fizzling out and it's just gonna be a one-time thing? Kind of interesting to just, like, I think that's their way of getting women involved in wrestling somehow, whether it's just them being an audience member or whichever, and I like that. I really enjoy how it seems that they're trying to figure out a way to incorporate women in this show, and good on them. I love that. Good for them doing that. I really enjoyed that. Like, this completely makes up for the fact that women aren't wrestling on the show, because it doesn't matter. They figure out a way to incorporate women. Good enough for me. Good enough. I'm not going to complain about it anymore. Why should I? But yeah, so there's a spot, maybe I technically talked about this, like where Vicky's making the blood and Crystal is talking about, like, how things are going, and that's when the spot where Vicky is to tell Crystal about the whole, like, touching the shoulders things, or just, like, one little touch might go a long way. But yeah, I hope I kind of have covered everything, because I review this in a very roundabout way, so I apologize, but otherwise, like, there's a lot of stuff rolling around in this brain. So, eventually after this match, we have Bobby Pin, who ends up giving a thing of ice to Rooster, and Rooster is like, hey man, I'm driving. And so, because, like, really Bobby is trying to make Rooster one of the guys, but, like, Bobby sometimes doesn't think about it, because Bobby also tried to sneak like the ice into the urinal, and while Rooster was peeing on it, so he's like, hey mother, like, no, I'm not gonna touch that, I just peed on that, no. And then he's like, hey man, I'll just clean it off, I didn't think about it. He's like, no man, no. So eventually when Rooster is to get into his car, there's the ice there, and Rooster's like, dude, I'm driving. But he's like, hey man, send me the video of it later of you drinking that, so that way there's proof. Because like, hey man, like not everybody needs to be a main eventer. It's just that everybody just needs to be like incorporated, involved, and some people need to feel like they're connected to something. And I think that's what really Rooster needs, if anything, to just feel like he's connected with everybody, because I don't feel like he is. Because that's maybe where a lot of this stuff is kind of coming from, maybe for his character. But again, what would I know? Like, I'm just trying to decipher or dissect some characters to kind of figure out where their story is. Uh, but yeah, like, definitely. So let's cover the entrance of these characters. So of both Robbie Rabies and of course Jack Spade. So Jack Spade with his belt goes out there and does his promo, and the women are going like, "Ooh, like Jack Spade!" Like, all right, he looks so hot. And then all of a sudden, Robbie Reyes comes out and he chucks his like dead animal skin, and is like, "Yeah!" Like getting the crowd riled, and everyone's like, "Yeah!" Because we want to see freaking CM Punk do some wrestling moves. Even though he's playing Rabies in this thing, like still like some cool stuff is being done here. Like, I think that like really just Phil Brooks was in really good shape. Freaking like and like this whole like thing that he was doing was really interesting, and I think that it was a fun thing to do. So all of a sudden we have this like drone that looks like this animal that's just like so goofy, and like Stephen Amell is like dodging it. He's like, "Whoa, what the heck is that?" Like as if he's not familiar with his character, but evidently he draws from somewhere. Like he gets popularity from wherever he goes. And evidently there's just a lot of like tickets and people get into seats because of Robbie Rabies. So uh yeah, so Robbie Rabies just goes and gets into the ring, and like we have this drone that is to spit blood right into Jack's face. All of a sudden, the match starts, and we just have like Rabies who's like putting his hands out. Is like, yeah, like freaking like spinning around with his hands out. It's like, yeah, and like doing the 10 punches and like doing this whole like really interesting way of doing things. Like we also had this spot before the match where Robbie Ray Bees was to mention about all the things that he has problems with his body, like a bad knee, bad back, bad everything. Like, but like he wouldn't give this up. So, and that Robbie Rabies is appreciative of getting this booking, and like we have the moment where Jack Spade is like, "Hey man, like I appreciate you coming here," and like so like this nice little sweet moment between this exchange between both Robbie Rabies and Jack Spade, because I also heard from like Phil Brooks himself that it seemed like this show. I think originally there was an idea that that Phil could have been actually the main character of the show, but then eventually like 2 years went by, and I think maybe like things changed and things happened, and all of a sudden eventually just like Steven was to be picked for this, and then like but eventually like Phil was going to, I hope, get some part of this, because who knows like what was actually going to happen, like perfectly like the like things were going to perfectly align and whatever. But like yeah, so really just overall a good episode. I'm trying to think if there's any little detail that I forgot about this review, but I think I've already said enough. I've spent like almost the close to the episode talking about all this, but it was really interesting. I really like the show. It's really fun. It'll be interesting to see where they go with this, where they go with everything. Um, like, hey, if the Robbie Rabies character is just to be used in one episode, I'm completely fine with that. More than likely, they probably already say that he's probably gonna be in only one episode, right? Probably. Uh, uh, yeah, he's only gonna be in one episode, and that's perfectly fine because honestly, it's really cool to just see uh, certain guys from like either if there are wrestlers or the people that are to be just put together for the show. Like it'll be interesting to see where they go with the show. Kind of adding people in, mixing it up, and whatever. So with that said, really good episode. And so yeah, I think that's all that I wanted to say. I feel like I'm missing a part of this episode somewhere, but good enough. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.